well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state. The right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. Welcome to another edition of Bearing Arms, Cam and Company. My name is Cam Edwards, and I am glad that you've joined the program today. We're going to do things a little bit differently because we've got a longer than normal interview with Delegate Kirk Cox coming up. So we're not going to have our good deed of the day, our recidivist report, or our armed citizen story. We'll get back to that on Monday, I promise you. But I want to save time for Delegate Cox because we've got a lot of stuff to talk about here. Earlier today, Delegate Mark Levine in Virginia, he's the guy who sponsored Ralph Northam's gun ban, magazine ban, suppressor ban in the last session, the bill that was the centerpiece of Governor Northam's gun control campaign. That bill died in the state Senate. It passed out of the House of Delegates in Virginia, but it died in the state Senate. 4 rural state Senate Democrats said, no, can't sign on to this in its current form. They didn't say, look, I'm not voting for any so-called assault weapons ban. They said, based on what it looks like right now, I can't do it. So in April, when Governor Northam held a ceremonial signing session for these gun control bills, he talked up the fact that he was bringing this bill back. He told gun control activists on a conference call that this bill, the gun ban, magazine ban, suppressor ban, would be returning in the 2021 session. Well, now Delegate Mark Levine says he's not bringing it up. He's not reintroducing it. He made excuses about the short session in 2021, obliquely referred to the controversial nature of this bill. Yeah, I didn't talk about how, gun owners all across the state of Virginia are quite literally up in arms over this proposal. And Governor Ralph Northam's backed off, too. Yeah, he's gone from saying, I'm bringing this back next year to, well, I'll do whatever the legislature wants. And if they send me a bill, then but I'm not going to. Yeah. So why are the Democrats running away from an issue that they ran on 2 years ago? Well, it's because 2021. Let me back up. 2 possibilities. A lot of folks have said, well, look, they're just going to wait for the federal government to do it. I honestly don't think that that's it. Because if you look at the makeup of Congress, or the likely makeup in Congress, we don't know exactly what the makeup of the Senate is going to be because we've got those runoff elections in Georgia. But the best case scenario for Democrats is that it's going to be 50-50, with Kamala Harris casting any tie-breaking votes, right? But you've already had Joe Manchin. Now, again, I don't know how much to believe him, but Joe Manchin has said, I'm not going to cast a vote to pack the court. I'm not going to pass a vote, or I'm not going to vote in favor of nuking the judicial or the legislative filibuster. So the cloture rule that requires 60 votes to pass in the Senate, right now, if a politician stands by his word anyway, that would still be in place. And Democrats would not have the votes to get Biden's gun ban plan through Congress. So I don't think that Virginia Democrats are backing away from Northam's gun ban because they think that they're going to get Biden's gun ban instead. I don't think that that's it. Instead, I think what's happening is that 2021 is an election year in the state of Virginia. Every seat in the House of Delegates, which the Democrats took control of 2 years ago, every one of those seats is up for grabs again, along with the Attorney General, Lieutenant Governor, and the Governor. So I think while 2 years ago, Democrats were more than happy to run on gun control, and Governor Northam vowed to bring this gun ban bill back, and Delegate Levine said this is an incredibly important issue. This is going to save lives. We've got to have this in place. Now these same Democrats are saying, well, we're going to pass on it this year. They know darn well. I'm going to have to watch my mouth here during this segment. They know darn well that gun control was not a winning issue in 2019. They know that it certainly wasn't a winning issue in Virginia in 2020. And they know that it's not going to be a winning issue in 2021. Virginia, this year in 2020, record number of gun sales. Previous record high, I believe, was back in 2013, maybe it was 2014. It's about 580,000 firearms that were transferred, according to the Virginia State Police. We're not even done with 2020 yet. We already have well over 700,000 firearm transfers that have taken place in the state of Virginia this year. So record high gun sales, concealed carry applications are going through the roof in the state of Virginia. And by the way, Virginia gun owners are still ticked off and motivated because of the half dozen gun control bills that Democrats did pass in the last session. So, yeah, 2019, Democrats were running on gun control. 2021, they're running from it. And that's where we start with our conversation with Delegate Kirk Cox, who is himself running for governor as a Republican. And by the way, I want to let you know, I have extended an invitation to Senator Amanda Chase's campaign as well. And hopefully we can get the senator on the program and maybe in the next week to talk about some of these same issues. But I want you to hear from Delegate Kirk Cox. It was a great conversation. And I asked some pretty tough questions that I thought Virginia gun owners and Virginia voters would want to know. And I certainly do appreciate the delegate joining me on the program. I hope that he'll be able to come back and join us again. And again, I want you to take a look and listen to what Kirk Cox has to say about Ralph Northam, Mark Levine, and these Democrats skedaddling away from their support for a gun, magazine, and suppressor ban. Take a look and a listen. Delegate Kirk Cox, thanks so much for joining us on the program today, sir.
Cam, it's great to be with you. Thanks for having me.
My pleasure. So let's talk first of all about news breaking today that Democrats are backing off of their plans for Governor Ralph Northam's, this is the centerpiece of his gun control proposal, his ban on modern sporting rifles, quote unquote, high capacity magazines, legally owned suppressors in the state. The governor pushed this hard last legislative session, but could not get this done. When he signed 6 other gun control bills into law in April, he vowed that he would bring this bill back. He said it's coming back next year. Well, now Delegate Mark Levine is saying he's not going to reintroduce the bill in the next session. Governor Northam says, I'm going to let the legislature take the lead, and if they don't bring it up, I guess they don't bring it up. What is your reaction to the fact that Democrats said this was a desperately needed piece of legislation? This was going to save lives, that Virginia would be safer with this gun ban in place. And now, as we head into an election year, they're backing off of their controversial proposal.
Well, Kim, I think it's good news for us to believe in the Second Amendment, because let's get to the truth. With those gun control measures last session, I think with the violence we saw in Richmond and them doing little about that, they've taken a lot of, I think, flack for that and defund the police. And Mark Levine gave these excuses about 30-day session and 2 weeks and other priorities. But to your point, if this was the priority, you would think this would be what you push. So I think heading to an election year, the good news is they're feeling some blowback. Caution your listeners, however. They're still real believers, and they do believe in those gun control measures. They believe that which we know is not true, scientific, et cetera, curbs violence. So I would say great news, be cautious. But for this session, that's really good news, because if we can capture the governorship and the House of Delegates, those are not issues we'll have to actually go back and repeal. We got enough to do. So I think it's great news.
Do you think that, to me, it seems pretty clear that this is a political calculation, that back in 2019, they were happy to run on gun control, and they actually credited gun control as the issue that brought them into power in the state house. But here we are in 2021. They did not see a blue wave in Virginia in the 2020 elections. And as we head into this election year, all of a sudden now this is not a priority. Is this pure politics in your opinion?
I think a lot of it is politics, and they're reading the tea leaves. But if I could, it's interesting. And I'm going to tell a little bit of a long story if you don't mind.
Sure.
But you can go back to George Allen. And it's when I first got in the legislature. If you recall, the Democrats thought gun control was the answer. Mary Sue Terry had the 5-day waiting period, we all remember, and that George Allen had truth in sentencing. It was interesting. Polls showed, I know you talk a lot about polls and the accuracy of polls. Polls showed both about 70%. But here's what's interesting. When you ask the question, which would actually have the most effect reducing crime, violent crime, 7-1 citizens said it is basically reducing, is eliminating parole, et cetera. They never truly believe a 5-day waiting period would work. They probably sort of instinctively say, well, I guess that might be all right. And I think the Democrats are seeing the same thing. They've got their defund the police, their gun control, as opposed to stuff I'm going to do, like my Partnership for Safe Virginia, actually fund the state police and fund sheriff's deputies in these parole board practices to let violent criminals out. And things like Project Ceasefire, which would really target the communities where we really have gun violence, which I think is a great project. I could go into a lot of detail on. And so, yeah, politically, I always laugh when people say the polling data supports gun control. It really does not. And I think you've seen with so many suburban families looking to get their concealed carry permit, with public safety being such a huge issue, I think they're sensing that's not going to be such a great issue for them. I'm excited to run on that issue and contrast what my position is going to be towards theirs. And I think you're starting to see the first signs they realize that a little bit.
Yeah, I suspect that you're right about that. And I do want to talk about Project Ceasefire in just a moment, because that is a really important piece of legislation. But I just have to point out that Virginia, long before Governor Northam proposed his first gun control bill last session, Virginia has been one of the safest states in the nation. I believe in 2019, we had the 46th lowest crime rate in the country. I mean, that means we're one of the safest states. And we had pretty good gun laws. We had laws that recognized our right to keep and bear arms. And we were not, a crime-ridden hellhole. We're a state that people want to move to, and we're also a state that embraces the right to keep and bear arms. So I reject completely the Democrats' assumption that the only way to deal with violent crime is by passing more gun control, because we haven't had a lot of gun control laws on the books, and we've had a very safe state.
Well, you cited statistics, fourth lowest violent crime rate. I would say the lowest recidivism rate, which we don't talk a lot about. Sure, we are the standard bearer to me, for safety. And just like we were the number one state to do business, Democrats never mentioned. To your point, what problem are we trying to solve? We are, if you look at the Chicagos and you look at some of the places that have the heaviest gun control laws, they have exactly the opposite statistics. So does Maryland. And so let's get down to the true, and this is what citizens are looking for. They want solutions. I think they're tired of rhetoric. They're tired of sort of the Democrats spouting these things that, basically don't affect any change for them in communities. So if you're in a minority community, I mean, you want safety. You want kids back in school. I mean, you want things that really affect your life, not some platitude or some ideology, which, frankly, to your point, doesn't work. And in other states and cities has proven not to work. And so I think that's so detrimental.
Absolutely. So get into Project Ceasefire. I mean, and let's kind of incorporate this into a question about your gubernatorial campaign, because Project Ceasefire, I've written a lot about this. This is a program that's been around for a couple of decades now. It's done pretty incredible work at reducing homicide rates in high crime neighborhoods and in high crime cities. The idea is basically use police to identify those most likely to offend, who are also those most likely to be a victim of gang-related violence. These are folks who are well known to law enforcement. They've got criminal records for the most part. Call them in, use the probation or parole officers, bring them in, have them sit down, and present a united front with law enforcement and community leaders to tell them you're going to stop shooting. And it will help you if you let us, but we'll make you if you don't. So there's a carrot and a stick. There are programs to, reintegrate these folks into society, help them with job training, help them get their GEDs if they want to improve their life. But if they don't, if they continue to pick up that gun that they obtained illegally, use it in the commission of a violent crime, then these cases, wherever possible, are referred to the U.S. Attorney's Office. There are no plea deals given. There's no quarter given. You're going away for as long as the law allows. Is this a message that you think can resonate beyond gun owners? Because as a gun owner, I like this. This focuses on violent criminals as opposed to legal law-abiding gun owners. But it seems to me like this is an issue that could and should be received very positively in deep blue parts of the state. And yet, when this was proposed earlier this last session, not a single Democrat would co-sponsor this bill that would have brought Project Ceasefire into the state of Virginia. So is this something that you think will appeal to those voters beyond the Republican base and beyond the conservative coalition, and allow you to maybe make some inroads in areas that have typically been pretty hostile to the GOP?
Yeah, Cam, no question. It's interesting. My district is the bluest Republican district in the state. So my district's about 30% minority. And I actually started off teaching at Peabody Middle School, which is 90% minority. So having dealt a lot with, swing communities, et cetera, sure, I mean, they care as much about their kids, they care as much about public safety than any of us. and they truly want things that affect change. So to your point, you described it well, but this brings together not just police, it's the faith community, it's prosecutors, it's community service organizations, and sort of the mantra is no bad neighborhoods. There are only neighborhoods where a few bad people are given free rein. And we all know that violent crime is very targeted, to your point. It is in specific cities, Petersburg and Richmond, etc. There's not this so-called, and it's very much to your point with targeted gang members, etc. So you basically try to get them all the help they can, removing tattoos that you've talked about, talking about getting them, job coaching and training, but being very specific. If you're not going to do that, we're going to put you away. And I think there's a tremendous lot of support in communities for that. They sort of know who those players are. They're terrified of them. And it doesn't allow them to live safely. It doesn't allow for their kids to go to school safely. So I couldn't agree with you more. And you do the small things like Rudy Giuliani did in New York. You look at inspection stickers. You do whatever you can to target those folks. So it's very, very important. And here's the contrast. Some of that money we were going to spend for Project Ceasefire, Attorney General Herring instead does this program called Respect Richmond that basically pushes web ads telling people not to shoot because they need to respect their city. Now, anyone with any common sense knows that not only doesn't work, it's almost silly on the face of it. So let's please advocate policies that will really help folks where they're at. So I couldn't agree with you more. I think it's going to play extremely well.
All right, so let's talk politics now, if we can,
Sure.
sir. So you are running for governor as a Republican. How long have you been a member of the House of Delegates?
This will be my 32nd year, so I'm by profession a U.S. and Virginia government teacher. I did that for 30 years, love doing that, and I've been in the House for this is my 32nd year.
Okay, I got to digress for just a second because this is something I've always wondered about. The position of delegate and state senator does not really pay enough in Virginia for that to be somebody's full-time job. Session typically starts in January, runs through April. That's in the middle of the school year. How did you manage that as a teacher to also serve in public service? Because I know that there are a lot of Virginians who, look, they're not financially independent. They're not attorneys. They don't own their own business. They would love to be, a public servant. They would love to run for office, but they think, I can't. I mean, how would I take time off of my job? How would I rearrange my schedule to actually serve in the government? You seem to have done it. How did you do it?
Well, don't forget we're a citizen legislature. As a government teacher, that's so important that we not have a full-time legislature. But to your point, I went to my school system. I took a leave without pay. They gave me a few civic days. I got a long-term sub. Luckily, I had the same wonderful lady teach the last 10 years. And then, of course, I went to the legislature. Now, having said that, I did all kinds of creative things with my students. I brought them to the General Assembly. We did committee meetings. I did a mock General Assembly that was very, very elaborate parliamentary procedure. You can imagine the guest speakers you can bring in, especially when I became majority leader and speaker, et cetera. So it was a win-win to me, and I love doing it. And to have that kind of firsthand experience as a teacher, as a government teacher in the classroom, you can imagine you run campaigns. You can show them what polling data really does. You can talk about campaign strategy. You can talk about the rule of law. But there's so many things you can bring firsthand experience. So I think it's great. The reason the success of a citizen legislature is you have farmers and doctors and you have business folks, et cetera. But if you're in it for the pay, it's the wrong profession. We make $7,640. I laugh. We made $18,000 when I first started, and we pushed through a 2% pay cut my first year. So I'm very proud of that. I mean, it's not there to make a bunch of money. That's not why you're there.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, and so why did you decide that this would be the year that you would run for governor after 32 years, or going into your 32nd year as a delegate? Why now?
Well, as you know, we lost control. And I watched Democratic rule for 10 months, and whether it be raising taxes or the anti-business stuff, right to work, the attack on 2A, very pro-life. It's one of the fundamental tenets I ran on and really blocked all their bad laws as speaker. I just watched 10 months of this collectivist government worldview that I feel is not only fundamentally changing the state, but changing it so quickly that if we do not win this governor's election in 2021, I fear for our nation. And I do feel like I'm the best candidate, the one that can unify the Republican Party. that has the grounding in the Second Amendment and in pro-life, but also is won in a very tough district, who's raised the money you have to raise. I raised $8.3 million as Speaker, and a lot of accomplishments to point to. We were in control. You talked about violent crime rate, but I would say, we cut taxes by $1 billion. We froze college tuition for the first time in 20 years. We left with not only a surplus, but a great reserve. And I love serving. And I do feel like I could be a very, very effective governor and lead, especially in things like this pandemic where the governor's done such a poor job, whether it be with these curfews, the way businesses have been handled and not consulted, et cetera. So there's a lot that I think I can accomplish. I have the fire to do it. Boy, you better be competitive and want to do it, else you'll never win. And just feel like I have that servant's heart that I want to really try to accomplish that.
All right, I'm going to try to channel a skeptical conservative voter for a couple of questions here.
Sure.
Because you talked about, unifying the Republican Party, and I think both the right and the left are divided. I talk about the left being made up of two factions now. You got the progressive left, that used to be the moderate left, but now they've moved to the left, so they're progressive. It's the progressives versus the socialist left. On the right, it seems you've got the populist right and the quote unquote establishment right. You've been in office for, again, going into your 32nd year. As a skeptical Virginia voter might wonder, all right, so why should we elect a career politician? Don't we need an outsider? Shouldn't we have somebody who doesn't know how to play the game, who isn't a part of this entrenched system that we want to change?
I would say you actually want someone with the experience, because what you want is a governor, when he hits the ground, he understands the budget, he understands budget language. Let's say, for example, we want to skillfully repeal one gun a month. Boy, you better have someone that has some coalitions on both sides. There's certain Senate Democrats still you can work with. Having been Speaker, for example, I will say I shut down that special session of Governor Northam on gun control. Having that kind of experience, knowing exactly who to work with, I think is essential. I sort of laugh, and I understand that sentiment of the outsider. Please don't get me wrong. But you don't want a doctor who's an outsider. I mean, you don't want a guy that's, doing surgery on you suddenly that's been practicing for about a month, and you're having major back surgery. I don't. I tried to find the most experienced guy who had the best reputation. Now, I didn't want a guy that just been around 30 years. But boy, I did want a guy that everyone told me would do a bang-up job. And I've always sort of questioned if you can find someone who is committed philosophically and is going to, and that's what he's all about, and hopefully will be himself. Why wouldn't you want that person over someone that basically has never gotten it done and hasn't been in those tough spots? I think it's a tremendous advantage. It's just like sports. I mean, you really do want that veteran, hopefully, that's been in the big game, that knows in the bottom of the ninth you're up with 2 outs and in a big situation gets a tough pitcher. I think it really helps to have that experience.
All right. Next question. This is not a Second Amendment related question, but it is something that has come up. Amanda Chase, Senator Amanda Chase has said this several times here, that we would not have had Medicaid expansion in the state of Virginia if it were not for your efforts. To those small government conservatives who worry about, increased entitlement programs and increased taxes to go along with it, what would you say to those voters who would ask you, Delegate, why on earth did you work to expand Medicaid in Virginia?
Well, I would say, first of all, as majority leader, I blocked Medicaid expansion for about 7 years. But once again, as a leader, here's where I was at. We were at 51-49. I had about 8 Republicans, and a lot of them from Southwest Virginia. And remember, Southwest Virginia is in some tough circumstances, and they saw that helping the working poor. One had written a very heartfelt editorial. I clearly didn't have the votes. Medicaid expansion was put in the budget, don't forget, skillfully. And so here were my choices. I knew we didn't have the votes. We would have ended up locking up the budget past July 1st. We saw what happened, unfortunately, when that happened on the federal level. And I was, to me, faced with, we were going to get a straight Medicaid expansion if we did that way. Plus, I thought there's no way that we could actually affect change. So I took the Mike Pence model out of Indiana, worked somewhat with the Trump administration, which had work requirements, remember, had cost sharing. And here's the key. It had what's called a kill switch. And so Medicaid expansion is a 90-10 federal, 90%, state 10% funded program. And still to this day, if it drops $1 below that, then the program goes away. And my feeling was that was much more of a, as much as you can get a free market type thing. But I'll say this about Amanda. She's also got to give me credit. If you're going to do it that way, then at 51-49, please give me credit for shutting down the special session on guns. We've got to hold every Republican vote. Give me credit for killing the Kathy Tron pro-abortion bill where I came off the dais and spoke to that. Give me credit for blocking all those Democratic tax increases and bad bills and holding our caucus together probably on every major issue. So you got to have it both ways.
Talking again with Delegate Kirk Cox, running for governor as a Republican in the state of Virginia. You talk again about unifying the Republican Party. How specifically do you plan to do that on the campaign trail, Delegate?
Well, I think I've already done it, Cam. If you look at my endorsements, Bill Carrico, the conservative Southwest Virginia senator who was looking at running for governor, endorsed me. And we announced I thought, a great package called Partnership for Safe Virginia, which will really help state police and deputy sheriffs with some of their key issues. Tom Davis and Jean Marie Davis up in Northern Virginia, who was the congressman, more from the moderate wing of the party, have endorsed me. And of course, we're very well thought of. I just got six former GOP chairmen in Virginia Beach and the mayor, Bobby Dyer. Chesterfield, where both Amanda and I reside, I got 58 Chesterfield grassroots, board of supervisors, etc. Recently got Chesapeake. Frank Ruff, a conservative senator from the South Side, along with Tommy Wright, James Edmonds, Don Merrick. You won't find more Sec 2A. I think I've already shown that with who I'm pulling together grassroots-wise, that I'm pulling all those key players together from all wings of the party. And we're going to want to win, Cam. The bottom line is that there's going to be a tremendous desire after we've watched what the Democrats have done for Republicans to win. And they're going to look at who can raise the money, who's going to basically lead, and I think do all those key things. And I feel strongly I'm that person.
All right. One of the issues, and again, this is not a Second Amendment question, but one of the issues that we have seen some divides within the Republican Party is over the legalization of marijuana. A lot of social conservatives say, look, this is a bad idea. It's going to be a gateway drug. It's going to lead to, folks messing up their lives. You've got more, libertarian style conservatives who say, look, this is a matter of individual freedom. A number of other states have already done this. It looks like we're moving in this direction. Virginia should go ahead and adopt a legalization model, start to generate some tax revenue, perhaps. Where do you come down on that issue?
Yeah, I do not support it right now, Cam. And you summed the argument up well. But I would think most people really thinking it through. Remember, we're in a short session, so it's 30 days. So if you're going to legalize marijuana, it's a tremendously complex model. Everything from does ABC control it? Do you have an independent agency? You got to work through the dispensaries. Are they all going to end up, as in some states, in these minority communities, which certainly is not helpful to them? Then you have all kinds of extremely tough issues. How will the tax revenue be generated, et cetera? So remember, the way our session is going to work is basically bills are going to have 2 weeks in the House and then go to the Senate. I don't think there's any way you can get that correct. And if you look at states that have not gotten it correct, it has been a disaster for them. So I would even say for my libertarian friends, it's got to be a lot more well thought out than it is in a short session in the way the Democrats are pushing it without some of the consequences I think are there. So at the very least, it's not ready for prime time in my opinion.
What about in terms of your candidacy? If you are elected governor, what would your position be? Would you just take an open mind as to whatever the legislature might send you, or would you, try to influence that debate one way or the other?
Yeah, you'd have to do a lot of convincing of Kirk Cox on that issue. I mean, I think as I've stated, I think there are a tremendous amount of problems with legalization. Now, we're not talking about decriminalization, we're talking about legalization. And generally as governor, I mean, I'm certainly going to listen. I mean, one of the hallmarks I think you listen to people about me is I'm not someone that thinks they know everything. And so one of your obligations is to listen. But it would take a lot of convincing for me on that particular issue.
All right. If you are elected governor, would you work to repeal the half dozen or so gun control laws that Governor Northam signed earlier this year?
Yeah, I think it's very important. But let's be, once again, I want to be frank with folks.
Sure.
Here's where we're at. Hopefully I'm governor and I can help us take back the House of Delegates. So right now, we are probably not going to have the Senate. I mean, right now, they're not up. So they're not up till 2023. So to me, what we need to do is focus on, and I think you can name a few. You can pick one gun a month, some of the red flag stuff. You need to pick what's doable. So what is the thing that would probably be the most doable and effective? And let's really try to get some things done. And also, I mean, just having the governor in place is going to allow you, to me, and you've talked about this, to change a little bit of the perception of these erroneous gun control arguments. I think there's a lot you can do when we talk about Project Ceasefire, getting people to truly understand what really does affect change.
Mm-hmm.
And then I think you can win the few votes, but you're probably realistically not going to go in there and repeal all of them the first year. I don't want people to think that. But sure, I think you strategically start to build alliances, and hopefully then when you get to 2023, you can actually do a lot more. But it certainly will be a priority to work on, obviously, supporting the Second Amendment.
Beyond, working to try to repeal those gun control laws, are there any pro-Second Amendment provisions, any pro-Second Amendment bills, maybe things that are in place in other states that you would support and that you would work for to put in place here in Virginia?
I would say right now the priority really should be at, I think you're going to be much better off looking at some of the egregious things that have been passed. I think that's where probably your first priority should be. I think that would be much more effective. I think you can make great arguments, for example, against one gun a month. I know on one of your shows, and there are great arguments. For example, waiting periods, when you talk about victims and how that hurts a victim when you have waiting periods. So I think there's some established bills they already have. We'd be better off probably being more proactive on. I just think that's a better strategy right now.
All right. Delegate, I'll leave you the last question. I'll make it open-ended. Is there anything that I haven't asked that you would like voters and in particular gun owners in Virginia to know?
Yeah, I would like for them to know, as a U.S. and Virginia government teacher, there's no one that probably has more respect for the Declaration of the Constitution and what are the key fundamental rights. And it goes beyond just, making sure we protect responsible gun owners. It's absolutely essential to understand those fundamental freedoms is what this country was built on. And it's interesting, when the Federalists and Anti-Federalists were debating that issue, they were actually debating whether or not to have a Bill of Rights. And the other argument was that they were afraid a Bill of Rights would actually restrict other rights. And so they put the Ninth Amendment in to protect that. But there are only 10 of them. I know that's simplistic, but if you look, they were what they considered the fundamental freedoms. And you can look at the Third Amendment on quartering soldiers in your home during peacetime and illegal search and seizure. Those were to them the foundations of our freedoms, etc. And so just to willy-nilly say that this isn't one of the key issues, to me, is tragic, and also to grandstand on it. It's got to be one of those fundamental issues that you can articulate. And so for me, it's very, very heartfelt, like the life issue for me. So I just want to make sure people understand that comes from a constitutional grounding and a love of our founding documents that I taught for 30 years and taught high school students. So that's probably what I'd like to leave with people above everything else.
All right. Well, I certainly do appreciate your time. If you come back, let's just spend a half hour talking history, because I'm a history nut. Living in Virginia, we've got so much of it. So I'd love to have you back. But thank you so much for joining me on the program, sir. And I hope you have a very Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year.
Cam, thanks for the opportunity. I hope you have a great Christmas. Thanks.
Again, I really do appreciate Delegate Cox joining us on the program. As I said at the beginning of the program, I have also extended an invite to Senator Amanda Chase. I should go ahead and tell you, I've also reached out to Governor Ralph Northam's office. Now, I'm not expecting to hear back from Governor Ralph Northam. That I were. But I have extended an invite to the governor to join us on this program to talk about why he is no longer calling for his gun ban, magazine ban, and suppressor ban. I don't expect that the governor is going to be a guest on this program. In fact, I'm so confident that he's not going to be a guest on this program, even though I've extended an invite. I'll eat my hat if Governor Northam says, yeah, sure, I'll be happy to join you. But I do hope we get a chance to hear from Senator Amanda Chase as well. Again, the Republican Party nationwide is pretty divided. Conservatives in the state of Virginia are pretty divided. I think as a Virginia gun owner, as a Virginia voter, as a conservative in Virginia, it is, as Delegate Cox said, it is critically important that we unite this year, that we push back as hard as we can against the Democratic onslaught, Because if we don't do that, Democrats are going to keep control. And I guarantee you, though they're running from gun control right now, if they maintain control of the governor's mansion and both chambers of the state legislature in 2022, yeah, that gun ban bill, that magazine ban bill, that suppressor ban bill, they'll be back. And they'll be joined by other attacks on a right to keep and bear arms, restrictions on concealed carry, raising the fees, maybe increasing taxes on ammunition, going after ranges. We have a chance in 2021 to send a message and to put a stop to these attacks on a right to keep and bear arms. But in order to do that, as gun owners, as Second Amendment advocates, we have got to present a united front. All right, that is all the time we've got for you on this edition of Bearing Arms Cam & Company. This also, by the way, is the last Bearing Arms Cam & Company of the week. We're not going to do a show on Christmas Eve, not going to do a show on Christmas. So I want to take this opportunity to wish you and yours a very Merry Christmas if you celebrate. We will be back next week, however. Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, we've got live show, or not live, but we'll have brand new shows for you, live to tape. And we'll let you know who's going to be on the program coming up on Monday. But I hope that next week Senator Chase can join us. Again, thanks to Delegate Kirk Cox for being a part of the show today. If you would like to make sure that you never miss a program, well, we can help you out. Just go to Town Hall Media on YouTube, subscribe there, or search for Bearing Arms Cam & Company on Rumble, and you can subscribe. Make sure that you get every program. If you just want the audio, understandable. That's fine. Take us while you're driving if you want. Amazon Podcasts, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, SoundCloud, Stitcher. You can find us there as well. Again, hope that you and yours have a very Merry Christmas. We'll see you on Monday with another edition of Bearing Arms Cam & Company. But in the meantime, be safe, be well, be merry, and be free.